Hello and welcome to BioRules video lessons. Today we are going to be talking about matter. In previous classes we saw that living organisms, they need energy for endoganic reaction, abolition movement, etc. We saw how they get it. But today we are going to see how they get matter, how they get molecules, how they get elements. And the focus is going to be today on carbon. Hydrogen and oxygen are quite easy to get. Carbon is a little bit more tricky. So the living ecosystems have a special way of getting this and dealing with carbon. This is known as the carbon cycle. So, carbon dioxide, it's in the atmosphere and is the third gas in the composition of the atmosphere. It's not much, it's less than 0.5%, but that's enough already for plants to be able to do photosynthesis and to glue those carbons together, making organic molecules. If you're not familiar with the photosynthesis formula, here it is. Carbon dioxide is glued together with water using light energy to make organic molecules. So basically carbon dioxide is going to become sugars and lipids, fats, proteins and so on. This organic material gets into the body of the plants. However, the plants also need to spend organic molecules to get energy for themselves by the way of cell respiration. If you're not familiar with cell respiration, it's exactly the opposite of photosynthesis. Organic molecules rich in carbon, they are broken down using oxygen, releasing water and carbon dioxide. So cell respiration is the way of plants to put back the carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. That's why it's a cycle. Carbon enters, carbon leaves back. However, not everything on the plant is respired and sent back. The plant grows, and when it grows, it stores carbon in there. Part of this carbon is passed on to the next trophic level by the way of feeding, and on and on and on. So all the other trophic levels, the heterotrophs, they feed on plants or on someone that fed themselves on plants. So by the way of feeding, carbon is passed from the plants to the primary consumer, then to the secondary consumer, and on and on. These heterotrophs, they also do cell respiration, so they also return carbon to the atmosphere. So this is the carbon cycle, the basic carbon cycle, because it's carbon from the atmosphere going to the plants, that goes to the animals, and from animals and plants, it goes back into the atmosphere. But taking a look in a slightly more complex version of this, we can have the basic carbon cycle that we had before. Here it is. But in addition to this cycle here, we may have decomposition. Plants that die and are not eaten by animals, animals that die are not eaten by other animals, the leftover of the bodies, so feces and the carcasses, all that, they may be decomposed by fungus and bacteria. They are called saprotrophs, and detritivores, animals that feed on that matter. When they do that, they also do cell respiration. So all the decomposers are helping to turn back material that was once in the body of a living organism back into the atmosphere. Ultimately, every living being, when it dies, should be decomposed and its body should be returned back to the atmosphere in the way of carbon dioxide. Okay? However, some bacteria, especially some archaeobacteria, instead of doing cell respiration, they do a chemiosynthesis that makes methane. So there is a production of methane by some bacteria, and the methane can suffer oxidation and become carbon dioxide. So it's also part of the carbon cycle. And sometimes plants, animals, or even decomposers, they are not decomposed themselves. In that case, they accumulate in the soil by the process of fossilization, and they become fossil fuel. This fossil fuel stays there as a deposit of carbon under the ground, up to the moment that we find it and we burn it. And when we burn it, we use combustion to extract energy from fossil fuel, from petrol, coal, natural gas, and that combustion gives us energy but return carbon dioxide back to the atmosphere. So this here is a more complex cycle of the carbon cycle that we have in nature. Okay, so here we have a diagram showing all those processes: photosynthesis transforming CO2 into carbon organic compounds in the producers, but also doing cell respiration, put it back. The producer feeds the heterotrophs, and the heterotrophs also do cell respiration. Animals, they may defecate, they may die, or the plants, they may die, and when they do that, the decomposers put back carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. However, if you have an incomplete decomposition, part of the material that's not decomposed becomes fossil fuel, coal, oil, natural gas, and if we do combustion, we return that back to the atmosphere. This is the carbon cycle. In addition to this typical carbon cycle here, there is carbon that's from the atmosphere gets dissolved in water. When carbon dioxide in the atmosphere gets dissolved in water, it makes carbonic acid. So the water gets slightly more acidic. This carbonic acid can be uptaken by some animals to make calcium carbonate. This calcium carbonate is what makes the shells of the mollusks, that makes the skeleton of the coral reefs. So they build the bodies using calcium carbonate. The same thing that we have marble. So this calcium carbonate is another deposit of carbon into the living systems. Sometimes those animals, they die and they get fossilized. They make a sedimentary that later becomes a metamorphic rock called limestone. Limestone is a very famous rock. Here in Brazil, we have a lot there in the Petar region, where you have the caves. Caves are very often made by limestones because limestone is easily eroded. And the limestone can be eroded and give back calcium carbonate to the water to make more shells, and even some of these shells may be dissolved and become carbonic acid back again. So this is another cycle of carbon that, instead of involving photosynthesis, involves fixation of calcium carbonate into the body of living organisms, making the most famous coral reefs. All those corals over there, they are made by, among other stuff, calcium carbonate. So there's carbon over there. It's a big deposit of carbon in our planet. Okay, so if we compare energy and nutrient in the atmosphere, specifically here thinking about carbon, which is a very good example of how living systems deal with nutrients, we are going to see that the energy flows while the nutrients, they cycle. That's a very important distinction. That energy flows, it enters by photosynthesis, it passes through feeding, it goes away by heat. So here, energy gets in by photosynthesis. What about nutrients? Carbon gets in by photosynthesis. Energy moves by feeding. Carbon also moves by feeding. Not a difference in there. Energy is lost in the way of heat, and carbon moves out by cell respiration in the way of CO2. Okay? Energy does not come back to the system, and carbon may move back from CO2 by photosynthesis back to the system. So that's why we say that energy flows, and we say that nutrients cycle. Very important distinction between how living systems deal with energy and with nutrients. Okay? Just to illustrate this idea of cycling nutrients, this here is a place called Biosphere 2. This Biosphere 2 is a closed environment, is a gigantic greenhouse, but this Biosphere 2 is sealed to the outside. So everything living in there, every single plant, every single animal, every single human being that's living in there is not exchanging gases, material, food, anything with the outside. They are closed in there. They are sealed inside this place over here. The only thing that gets in is solar radiation. And the only thing that gets out is heat. So how does it work? It's beautiful. Let's take a look at a smaller one. This here is a tiny little version of that made by a guy called David Latimer. And in the 60s up to the beginning of the 70s, he had these plants grow into this bottle. But by that time, he used to open it to water. He were trying to see more water, less water, so he opened it once in a while so gases were capable of going in and going out. However, in 1972 up to the present, he has sealed it. These plants are living in a totally sealed container. And how is that possible? Because it receives light, so it does photosynthesis. By photosynthesis, it gets carbon dioxide that's surrounding those plants over there. They put in the body of the plants. And the plants, or whatever organisms that are there in the soil doing decomposition, decomposing the plants that die, they do cell respiration, they return carbon dioxide back to the air surrounding. And the only thing that gets out of here is heat. As soon as the amount of heat getting out is equivalent to the amount of energy getting in by light, this system stays in equilibrium and stays very well balanced. This is an experiment showing the pH in aquariums that are suffering photosynthesis. pH in aquarium represents hydrogen carbonate. No, it's the carbonic acid. When you have too much carbon dioxide, the pH gets down. So, when the pH is high, you have less carbon dioxide. When the pH is low, we have more carbon dioxide. And what we have here is cycles of night and day. And night and day and night again. So by seeing this, we see that carbon dioxide here, I'm going to be representing that into the color purple over here. Carbon dioxide during the night is quite stable over there, but then during the day it reduces, it goes up because the plant is doing photosynthesis. And then it reduces the amount of photosynthesis when the day is getting long and long. Then during the night, gets down over there, and then gets up again, and then gets down. So basically, there is a carbon cycle, even in an aquarium, in a closed system. Our planet works more or less like that. If we go to a database like this global monitoring laboratory, we can go there and we can see carbon dioxide in a place, getting daily or hourly or monthly average. Here I'm going to be getting monthly average in a place called Mauna Loa. This is an observatory in the top of a mountain in the middle of the Pacific in Hawaii. This is a very good place for us to see the cycling of carbon dioxide in our planet, because it's away from, it's one of the most distant places from industries and factories and lots of cars. Although Hawaii has some houses, some cars, no, it's not much, and receives gases from all over the planet. And what we see there, in Mauna Loa, over time, is that carbon dioxide goes up, and then carbon dioxide goes down, and then it goes up, and then it goes down, and up, and down, and up. So what's going on in here? In this case, these ups and downs are not because of days and night. The planet Earth is a very big place. This is because of our seasons. During summer in the northern hemisphere, where we have most of our land is located in the equator or northern hemisphere, we have lots of photosynthesis. It's warm, plants are doing photosynthesis, carbon dioxide goes down. Like in here, this is summer. And then the winter comes, autumn actually and winter, then the carbon dioxide goes up because the plants stop doing photosynthesis, but the decomposer is still decomposed, it goes up. And then it goes down, and then goes up and down. And what we are having here is a cycle, up, down, up, down, up, down. And each up and down here is 1 year. Summer goes down. Winter, it goes up. Beautifully and nicely. Actually, we see another trend here that not only this is cycling, but it's also increasing in concentration, but this is a topic for a whole new class. This trend of going up, we are going to see another day. This is the original data on Mauna Loa. And another place that's very far away from everywhere is the South Pole. This is exactly on the South Pole, Amundsen Scott Base. There is a station there that measures. And what we see here, not so clearly, because the winds there are kind of weird in the around South Pole, but we see up, down, up, down, up, down, and we are also seeing the trend of carbon dioxide going up that we're going to be studying in another class. Now, there is a quiz here for you. I hope you had fun and that you managed to show in the quiz that you understood what you watched. See you in the next class. Bye-bye.